isn't going to have older members take physical bodies again until there's a certain amount of cleaning up of the atmosphere and the spirit world, and so that they already did the teaching part of the mission, or by being here incarnate, and that the only return that is going to happen is going to be the gathering of the spirits and the souls that the next level wants to save for future opportunity.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Initially, for the last few decades, the word cult bothered me. It was rather irritating. But on the flip side of it is, in terms of a cult, it seems that it seems like you allow the organization to replace your family, and your family becomes the outsider versus the people there with you are the insiders, and they're your new family, and your birth family is more of an adoptive family versus by blood.
Yeah, I think we have an interesting perspective on that because we were sharing with someone talking to before this, which was like, I think the word cult now has a very different connotation. Like for the other, members here, it actually doesn't factually make sense to call them cults. The original meaning of the word cult was a group of people that honored goddesses. That was the ancient meaning of the word cult. And that's kind of how they would deem, ancient matriarchal structures, is like, oh, these people worshipped goddesses and the mother and the feminine, and that was called a cult. So like for us, it's not like it's actually factually correct. So I think it's kind of inappropriately used in these other terms, but yeah, I think for us, we were kind of like, well, yeah, sure, we're like the cult of love, like whatever, but I think now it's become a very derogatory thing. But then you look at other words like culture, that has the root word of cult. I'm sure there's other words with that root word. So it's just kind of interesting how they take words and create these kind of derogatory meanings, and it's just an interesting thing to think about, where it doesn't really mean what they say it means.
When you were talking about your dad kind of opening your eyes to that world, did he ever get involved with your group or express an opinion?
Yeah, his opinion was that I'm crazy.
Why?
Yeah, it was a little over his head. The irony is that if you guys saw the documentary, my mom is in it, and she's become the more supportive parent, and she was the head troll of the trolls in the beginning, and yeah, now she's more chill, but yeah, my dad thought it was a little too up there for him.
Did you say you're the one that put me on?
I did tell him that, and I remember not long after I got there, he called me and he was like, well, what am I supposed to tell everybody, that you're not coming home? And I was like, yeah, we'll tell them the truth. And he goes, so you want me to tell everybody, like your grandparents, friends, family, that you're in California with God? And I was like, yeah. And he lost it. So he didn't visit, and he actually, after everything happened and mom left, we actually had a falling out and didn't speak for 4 years. And in September of this year, he got guided, he said, to reach out to me. So we finally rekindled our relationship after like a 4-year hiatus. So yeah, I've told him before, where I was like, you're the reason I'm kind of on said path, and I don't know if you really like that, so, yeah, it's kind of ironic.
I'm glad you have the community.
Yeah, we're friends again.
I was going to say, for my part of the cult question, Doe, more commonly known as Marshall Applewhite, he referred to it as a cult. He said, we're a cult, we're the cult of cults. So if you've seen the documentary, that's where the title comes from. So we don't really take offense to it, I don't think, and I'm sure these two are very used to it. So.
What happens is that depending on what age you are when you see them, like I was initially introduced at 15 years of age and became a full-fledged member at 18. But when you see political figures, being local political figures or national political figures that are catering to them, for favors, for votes, for acceptance, for support, etc., you question yourself at a young age, because if I haven't been around that long, they're 2 or 3 times older than me, it's like, there must be something right about this. Or am I more intelligent than my elders are? And so for me, it was seeing the other young people my age being so focused and actually having a vision of what they want to be and what they want to do based on Jones's rhetoric. It wasn't so much Jones that was the attraction. It was the people around him that were attracted for me anyway.
I don't know if this addresses the question very well, but well, first of all, there were a very small number of people that were attracted to T and Doe, Marshall Applewhite, and Bonnie Nettles. There were 39 individuals that, chose to, in the classroom, the most people that were there were like 100 at first in 1976. And they didn't last very long, a lot of them, because they weren't keeping up with the program. And so that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of that is, it seems to be, to me, it's hard to, from my position, to look at the world and see the way that governments are working and that people are being manipulated left and right by the millions. And they're acceptable for a lot of people. They think they're doing the right things. They have their justifications for murdering people all over the planet. And it's like, and yet the groups that are, having a little, trying to do the right thing, and sometimes they get caught up in doing terrible things also, but it's not comparable really. Why somebody else isn't popular, or because the ones that are the least popular are probably closer to the truth about what our existence is and things like that. But it all can be very complicated. It's really not in my mind.
I was going to say it was bold to lead with the thought that politicians don't inspire this, cult-like behavior and
To a certain extent, yeah.
a heavy amount of damage on a large scale. Yeah, that's
To a
what I
certain
was.
extent, yeah, but they're still different than Jones and Applewhite, Manson, and all those others. Still a little bit different.
Could you?
That you see in humanity is all within us individually. So when we see these stories and we see other people's experiences and we judge it, or we say, spending 20 years researching Manson, right? It's like you come to this thing of like, is this just evil? how did this happen? Like, how does someone get to that point, right? And I just think you have to take everything with that, all the sides of humanity, and say, we all have to face this. It's not just this person's good and this person's bad. That's within all of us. We all share the same consciousness. So if there is quote unquote evil that exists in the world, well, I gotta take accountability for that too. I've contributed to this in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's sometimes good to kind of face the shadows of humanity so we can all decide to go deeper within ourselves and say, okay, I'm gonna decide I'm gonna be more kind, more empathetic, more forgiving. I'm gonna put more love out into the world if I wanna see this quote unquote evil disappear. So for me, it's a mirror. And I do have a lot of hope for humanity. And I think we all have these experiences so that we can be a piece of that. We can give some sort of inspiration or hope to the world, even if we've gone through like trauma or tragedy in some way. I think that's our piece of the puzzle.
You know, just a message for humanity or the collective as a whole. I feel it's hard to imagine, and I said a little bit of this during our panel and speaking and all of that, but it may get rough seas for a little bit out there. We're already in rough seas, and I know it's hard to believe that things are going to get better, that we're going to unite as one species. It's very hard when we feel we have so many different divides and people are in different countries, different languages, different backgrounds, different experiences. But for us and me personally, I know that we're heading into something greater than what we can imagine. You know, the end of fear, pain, and suffering on this planet, the ending of a hierarchy where people are suffering and the people at the bottom get scraps, and there's people up at the top that are hoarding resources and abusing this planet. You know, we have a future where we're going to come together, be really, really happy, and we're all going to be successful and thrive. And I feel the most important thing is that even on your toughest days, to hold that vision, you know, hold that vision of love for yourself and others in your heart, and do the best that you can to be that guiding light for others, your friends, your family. You know, it could be as simple as holding a door for somebody on a day that you're not feeling good and that person says thank you and you make each other's day. You feel like it doesn't matter, but those things are what make us human, and those things are what change the world. And like I said, it's only going to keep getting better. So we have to trust that and know in our hearts that a better day is coming for everybody on this planet.
It seems like what we're going through now are growing pains, because we're in a position to where we're not the leader in the world anymore, being just in the United States, just being an American. That doesn't make us a leader just because we're in the United States. And what we're facing is the reality of is that we might not lead the world in terms of what's right or what's wrong in the near future, and even what's happening now. And in terms of belief, it's like the U.S. had or has allies. They have completely different beliefs from us, but they still support us in certain ways. But at the same time, we've gone to such an extreme at this point that even our closest allies are questioning their allegiance to us or our allegiance to our own system. I think things will get better, but I think they'll get worse first. Because just being in the USA, there are certain privileges that we're entitled to that you wouldn't see in other countries. And because of that, because it doesn't affect us directly, individually, this is a real open comment. we're not affected by it. And until we are affected by it, we have no reason to resist it because it's happening over there, down there, up there, etc. But when it's happening to us, at some point, then a stand has to be made. Now, hopefully that stand won't be violent. Hopefully that stand will be by the tens of millions marching and protesting in a peaceful manner. I don't see civil war. What I do see are individual outbursts, either by groups and or individuals, guided by those groups. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing the average American, the average person, the working class are being affected in a negative fashion. And you have to say something, do something immediately, whether that's just writing a letter, contacting your political party, marching. And it's easier said than done. We've seen other countries do it and say, that had never happened here, what is happening here? And it's happening in such a fast rate, such an exponential speed and time. What would take years anywhere else is only taking months for us to reach these conclusions. Whereas we've been on this course for well over probably 20 years now, where it's been changing, but it's been so minuscule that it got past us. But these last 10 months with this, what's happened in the last 10 months under regular circumstances, as we were a few decades ago, it'd probably take 2 administrations for these things to take place. And they're taking place in the first 10 months of an administration. That's scary, it's frightening, it's bewildering, it's depressing. It brings a person down, and also there's a certain amount of fear there because you're not allowed to share your opinion openly anymore. And we don't have our broadcasting system is questionable at this point. So having to remember it. Now, I went in with the ambition of writing this book, and I'd never be responsible for anything else because I've told everything I know. And I can forget it now, but it's been just the opposite. I've had to remember more, I've had to explain more, I've had to be more concise with my answers, I've had to be able to expound to a point to where I'm not talking above people or at people, but to people. And I have to relate to them in a way so they can see it within themselves. Because if you can't see it within yourself, it's hard for you to relate to it, because it's foreign to you. It's not a different language, it's not a different culture. It's foreign in the sense that I can't comprehend that. And if you have somebody who's gone through that, who's able to communicate that with you, it allows you to question yourself, your ideals, and your beliefs. And it's going to be your beliefs, your individual journeys, your individual struggles that are going to make the difference. It's not going to be somebody speaking for you or trying to represent you.
I feel for me, and probably both of us, the reason we want to talk about this, it's less about the mob aspect, it's more of, getting other people and you guys to, question everything we've been told just being born in this society. There's so many gaps, and we are just expected to, be born, do what our parents tell us to do and how they believe and what religion we're born into and what school tells us. And I feel if we can all begin to just feel a little bit differently and, question, is this real? Do the leaders have our best interests? Is this how we're supposed to be, so divided and not connected and miserable and not liking each other? There has to be something more out there for us, and to hopefully inspire you guys to know that the future's going to be great, that we're here on this planet for so much more than what we've been told. And everyone is just told that we're meant to be workhorses, go to college, get a job, work, retire, and that's really it. And I feel hopefully that everyone, just feels that we're here for so much more than that, and question things and unite more as a people, so we can make a change together. So.
I do it for the same two reasons you guys do what you do, because you're journalists and you're curious. It's simple. I'm an outsider, not an insider like these guys, so I just observe and try to figure shit out to the best of my ability.
For my part, Sawyer's been speaking for a long time, and I think one thing we definitely have in common on the reasons is there is a certain amount of challenging the historical narrative as far as the story has been told for, going on 30 years now. So a lot of it is that. I do agree that another part of it is sort of just to get people to consider something else and to, whether it's particularly in the Heaven's Gate story, to reconsider what you think of that. Just reconsider what you thought before anyway. But on our case, there definitely is a heavy bit of the speaking in order to try to give a better image of what it was like, rather than the same narrative that people are coming with that.
Yes. This question is for everybody, just in general. Do you think that if your cult was successful, that your lives would have been different in any way? In Heaven's Gate, not dead, in Manson, not in jail. I didn't hear your, I don't know what, the girls did, but, we came in late.
No, that's okay.
So, would you think your lives would have been different had you continued with these, groups?
I think maybe for us, our answer may be a little bit different from everyone, I'm not sure, but, what we had shared in our kind of experience was, from what Mom's purpose was in us gathering with her and stuff, was she was running out of time. She needed to pass on her knowledge. She needed to teach and make sure that there was at least, some beings who could get to a state of, divinity, or, to embody a certain level, right, of the spiritual wisdom. So I think in our case, it was successful in that she knew this wasn't gonna be a long-term thing. She had a short window of time to kind of pass on that teaching and make an impact in the consciousness. And so for us, even though it looks psychotic, like to us, I think that was success. Like, we've made it this far, and kind of, even piggybacking off the last question, like I think for us talking about our experience isn't really like, because we were totally okay with just like letting the narrative be what it was about us. Like, we haven't spoken publicly for 5 years. So we were totally fine with like the narrative being that way. But I feel we want to also pass on our experience and our wisdom, not to convince people, but just if it helps somebody, that's our purpose in like moving forward. So in that way, I think that's the success for us.
So I'd like to actually respond to the last question. So, kind of like what motivates me in particular to talk about T&O and the whole Heaven's Gate story, and that is that I can't outdo it, because it's like if you actually had experience with somebody that was blowing your mind constantly with goodness and good information and things that sounded more sensible than you've ever heard before, if you spend time with them, or read their literature, or watch their videos, and you start to see those things, it's like you cannot just keep it in. I mean, you can, of course. You can keep it in, because it's easier to keep it in the context of the Heaven's Gate story, because the media made that look like it was evil, and that all the followers were just blind sheep, the blind sheep that were just following down the road to, offing themselves. And that wasn't the case at all. So it's like, but to be able to explain that is almost impossible, unless the person that is potentially hearing it actually wants to know what's different about it. And they, like Alexander was saying, and they go and look for that information. They try to discover what was different about it, and than what the media is saying. And so if I can provide some of that, because if we don't have somebody to tell us what's different, then we're never going to learn what's different. And that's about any subject that somebody has personal experience with, then that person has a bigger perspective, even though it might not be the most accurate perspective, or the most good perspective, or the most intelligent, or whatever you want to look at it, faithful. But it is still a different perspective than you're going to get from the mainstream media that uses sound bites. I did interviews that were 3 hours long many times with all the media groups in this country. And they used about 1 minute probably total of most of them of what I said. And so, but it's up to the person that watches those videos and things to see in their own minds and say, does that add up? Does that make sense? Is that correct? There's something about that doesn't fit. That they're fitting into a narrative that really doesn't make sense to me, so I'm going to look into it. If you don't look into it, well, that's fine. I'm not saying that people must do anything, but they're not going to learn